members a credit for their registration.
Okay, here we go. We're starting a little late this evening for those watching at home, 6:05. We had a few issues with the streaming, but they are now repaired, and so we are ready for our budget workshop. And the reason for this budget workshop is that Megan got the information back from the bond bank, which meant, and I don't have it right in front of me, but basically that we will not have to make a principal payment in the upcoming budget year, and that the interest rate was a little less than we had been guessing, which is all to the good.
For the library.
Yeah,
Just for the folks at
library
home.
bond, right. And so that pulls out, and I don't have the number at my hand, that was,
It pulled out 60-something thousand, which put you 16,841 under LD.
right, so that, or 16,000 and some change under LD1, and the question for the board is, do we want to do anything about, do we want to leave that? Do we want to add anything back into the budget? I had emailed out a couple of thoughts I had a couple of weeks ago.
I would propose, Mr. Chair, if I might, taking at least 12,000 of that and putting it into the contingency set aside for any future hirings of the town manager, and to put the remainder of it towards stipends that we had talked about for employees that get their degree in whatever it is pertaining to their
The
work.
tuition reimbursement
Right,
program.
tuition reimbursement.
Yeah, we already put the tuition reimbursement program is in the budget here, suggesting increasing the amount for the tuition reimbursement.
As a possibility.
I think that, give me a minute, but I do think that adding money to the town manager contingency is a good idea for a couple of reasons. Number one, it'll give us a little more flexibility as we are negotiating a contract with a new manager, and number two, there are some other things, and one of this will be, make your heart warm, Mark.
Listen, it is.
Years ago, several years ago, when we had talked about the, trying to find the right comparisons for our salaries of our personnel, department heads and things like that, we had looked into having a professional come in and do a wage study and develop a wage step program, I think that's what it's called, for the town. And that costs some money, but that's something that the new town manager may want to look at, and if we have the money in the contingency available, that's something that I think we could do. So I think putting some money in the contingency for the town manager, I think is a good idea. Right now, I believe it sits at 10,000.
10.
And I was going to suggest putting another 10 in, making it 20, but, and I don't feel a compunction to push us right to the LD1 brink. So, anyway, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say that we seem to be thinking along similar lines, because I was going to suggest that we use 15,000. You know, I would like to stay below then LD1 and use 15,000 and put that into the contingency.
I'd go along with 15 and do away with the other that I had mentioned.
The other item is funded anyway, so
Yep.
I think that'll, and it's the first year for that, we'll see how that goes.
Yep, okay.
Whatever. Doug, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think Mark has a good idea. He's been sort of working on this for a year or two. So I think that makes good sense.
This is recorded, right? 'Cause I
Putting in
just
the amount in.
Good
in the-
job,
In the
Mark.
contingency for the town manager contingency.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, that was easy. Now, the only question is how much we're 16,000 under LD1?
16,841.
16,841.
So I would suggest 15,000, and it still leaves us a little bit under LD1.
Okay.
Perfect.
Everybody comfortable with that? Okay, I would have suggested a little less, but that's okay. I think 15 is okay. I think it gives us some financial flexibility moving forward in a lot of different ways, I think.
Yep.
So I think that's a pretty simple change. Anything else that anybody wants to do with, my original thought is we worked pretty long and hard on this budget, and we really kind of, ground out a lot of decisions on things. and
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily want to.
Well, I did.
Only other thing is the thing with the wastewater intern. We're not gonna be able
Oh,
to get
that's
an
right, yeah.
intern this year. It suggested had been
Oh,
to
yeah.
leave the money for the intern in and leave the offsetting revenue in. But if we leave the offsetting revenue in, then I have to increase the wastewater budget by that $5,000. Whereas if we're gonna hire somebody from wastewater, we could just charge it all to wastewater and not do the in-between.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I might?
Yes.
After consulting with our financial department, it's come to my attention that we will have approximately $4,000 remaining after we pay our last obligation to to the police department that has yet billed us. So we don't really need to put, you can put 35 in if you want to for the professional, what's it,
That's in this year's budget, not the upcoming.
but there's 4,000 that we're gonna be to the good, right?
There's gonna be $4,000 left in the reserve.
But there's another employee out there that,
If we get a bill for the other employee, there will be $4,000
So
left.
there's still 4,000 left, but that's in this year's, not next year's. My error.
So what Megan is suggesting then is a net zero effect on the budget, which is to take out the expenditure for the intern and also take out the offsetting revenue from wastewater.
Just so we don't have to like artificially increase the wastewater. rate.
Yeah, wastewater budget is gonna be a little tighter this year than it has been in past years, I think, so
Okay.
I'd go along
Yeah.
with that.
Good.
It's a shame we couldn't get an intern, because I'll tell you, we've gotten good value over the last couple of years on those, it's too bad, but.
Yeah, and I guess that was sort of my question. Have we given up all hope of?
Yeah, the deadline for them to submit stuff has already passed, correct, Megan?
Yeah.
And-
The problem we have here is that apparently there are a lot of kids that live in this area that participate in the internship program. So the closest one they could find us was from Windsor, and he found a job that was closer to home.
Well, I guess my next question might be though, I mean, suppose there was an interested citizen, you know, retired citizen or someone like that who had an interest in this sort of thing, and we know there are. You know, our community is very active with people in water quality and stuff.
I mean, there might even be somebody on the Conservation Commission that might,
You
Well,
could,
I think what Megan was saying, though, was that if we do find somebody, that we could fund that directly from the wastewater budget, since it is gonna be a wastewater.
Right, and this is gonna be an extremely labor-intensive process. We have about 800 homes that will have to be inspected. So
so,
to have consistency in the process, not that I'm discouraging it, but I would hate to see one volunteer do it one day and then have it done a different way the
No,
next day.
I'm not
So-
saying a volunteer. I'm,
he's
you
saying
know,
a paid person.
sort of a paid summer job for a retired.
so,
We had basically, the intern was basically 400 hours of work about, at
Right.
$10 an hour. So there's,
So how
it's set by, it's set by the university, you know, it's set, a set rate, set hourly pay.
how about we take the other $1,841 that's remaining, that keeps us under LD1, and put that in there with it to ensure we have a little more to be able to,
But that's gonna be charged to wastewater, cause that's really a
You're gonna have-
wastewater-specific process,
All right.
I think at this point, in the past, we've had the interns who've done a variety of things, not necessarily wastewater connected, and this year, we decided during the budget
Right.
process that the best task for them would have been the wastewater task, and so that's how we had it in the budget, but I do think that if we can find somebody, and I think, I
is
was
that,
talking with Megan, last week, and we were gonna reach out to Midco School of Technology, see if there was a, hot shot down there who might be interested or something of that
Was that-
nature, but we can fund through that through the wastewater budget, I think.
was that only through University of Maine,
Yes.
Orono, or the whole
Well,
system?
the whole system does it.
because they were getting school credit for it as
Right.
well
Yep.
as getting paid.
Yeah, they were-
And our last two interns have traveled from quite a distance to
Yes,
get here.
Yes, they have.
So both of them have traveled quite a way to get here.
Yeah, I think one of them had to find a place to live around
Yeah.
there, didn't they?
Yeah, to Doug's point, I was going there too, that I think that we need to try to not just give up on it and, you know, that we should be thinking about
Well, it-
pursuing it through, you know, a school close by and see if we can still do something.
Certainly, one of the pages, and we'll get into it when we get into the wastewater, but one of the pages you had in there, the one with the blue on it, we have a serious inflow problem in wastewater. So this project is not something that we can ignore, and it really has to be done this summer. So we have to find a way to be able to get it done.
So okay, that's what we were getting at with them finding the I&I or INR.
Right, yeah.
And
I
that-
mean, for instance, I'm just thinking, you know, we had a couple people retire from our public works department. You know, might one of the guys want to sign up to, you know, do this over the summer? Pick
What's
up a
the-
little
what's-
spending cash?
They certainly could. One of the ideas we had tossed around, and I sent an email out to them today, was to reach out to the Midcoast School of Technology and pair them with somebody from Public Works, because we really shouldn't be sending an individual into somebody's
no,
house. We
right,
should send them
right.
in pairs.
Yep.
And so the idea of just having somebody to go along with them is maybe some validity. What's the what's the harm in leaving it in the way it is?
There is no harm. It's really a wash in here, but if we just put it in the wastewater budget, then I'll just charge it to the wastewater budget instead of charging it to this and then reimbursing from wastewater.
So in,
The harm is if we don't find somebody through that line, that we end up having to artificially inflate the
Right.
wastewater budget. And one of the things that we've talked about is that the contract, and I don't know whether we should get into that or not at this point, but the contract for wastewater is coming up, Woodard and Curran contract is coming up, and they have told us apparently that they may need another employee because of the size of the system, and that employee may be able to do some of this work as his or her initial
so,
task.
so given the 146,210, I think that's what the overage would be. If we correct that, what difference might that make in our
Our use,
billing from Camden to us?
it will go down, and then it will also allow us to decrease our user rates.
Yeah, so, because we're gonna be billed when they do their new system.
Well, that's the big
Oh,
thing,
that's
is that when
right.
they take out a bond for that, we're gonna have to be responsible for a percentage of that, and we wanna get our flow down to
Right.
a reasonable, what it
And that's-
should be.
And that's
before-
what I guess I was wondering, how much will that lower whatever that bill might be?
Yeah, well, I guess this is why I'm a little reluctant to just say, oh, well, this didn't work out, and, you
No,
know,
no.
we'll see what happens. I mean, I think we need to really grab this bull by the horns. and-
agree.
And get this taken care of. And
I agree.
I agree, but I think,
we don't have a plan, really, unless I saw the email. You know, is that really the best solution right now to say, yes, let's go ahead, hire that extra person at wastewater and, you know, make that part of their job?
What email?
I didn't send an email. I don't know.
Someone
It was
sent
from,
something.
it was from Nate, the email from Nate.
Did you forward it to them?
I did, I think.
Not to me, I
I'm
didn't see
pretty
it.
sure I forwarded.
I know we
That's-
talked about it, Megan and I talked about it, but
Well, Megan, take a minute to explain that
So,
mushrooms.
so to address your first thing, I am currently in a position where I'm really gonna push for us to do this II study. We have almost to the tune of $150,000 that we're paying for clean water treatment that we don't need to pay for, and it's just crazy, and it's gonna artificially inflate our percentages to Camden. So I feel that it is very important that we do this basement study this summer. With the expansion that we're looking to do on Route 1, with some changes in staffing at Public Works, Woodard and Curran feels that it has become necessary to hire a second person to work with Andy Field, who currently works here, to service our pumps, do the line inspections, and make sure the system is working properly. This is kind of twofold. One, to get the day-to-day work done, and two, it really comes down to a safety thing as well as getting the work done. Andy spends a lot of time in manholes, and he's going down there by himself. So he fell and got hurt. There's nobody around that would know that he was down there and had gotten hurt. So it's really important that they have two people that can work on that kind of process. And if we had like a major outage or something for Andy to work all of our pump stations that we have now is a stretch. Plus, we're adding between 4 and 6 new pump stations with this extension. So it will become very labor intensive for the work he's doing now.
Is there a way, or are there funds that would be appropriate to use towards another employee coming up from Woodard and Curran now for a couple of weeks to do this? If they had somebody, you know, that,
We'd have to, Megan and Nate would have to work that out. And just, you mean until the new budget is passed and?
well, I'm thinking if we come up,
The new
well, I'm not
fiscal year?
talking about hiring the second person for them now, but if it meant that we could find the $146,000 that we're paying by virtue of the overage.
Yeah, you're not gonna,
it's gonna take some time.
yeah.
I
and
know, but you
Yeah.
know, if we have an employee that's trained to do that by,
You're not gonna recover all of that 146,000 and all of that, you know, missing water, 18 million gallons. You'll, you know, if you might, I'm picking a number, 50% even would be a substantial amount of money.
$70,000, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a,
you know, even 50%, because there's some inflow that we just can't control through a
But
sewer cover.
is that worth spending $5,000 now to have
Oh,
somebody
yeah,
come up and do
oh,
it?
absolutely it is.
So we
yeah.
can stop paying that extra
Yeah.
money for the
Yeah, I
pumpage
mean,
now.
I agree with
You're
Mark
gonna
on
take a
that,
while
too.
to recover it, but
You
it's
know, I
worth
think
it.
If we could pay for the employee for the period of
I mean,
time,
if we-
and it's the right thing to do.
I mean, if we think about how many years that we've been paying this extra, you know, who knows what that is?
And how many years we will in the future if our
Yeah, like
percentage
a
is
20-year
off.
bond.
And a
Right.
20-year bond is gonna be based on
So,
that
I mean,
volume.
if there's a way that we can find even a professional to come in and do it, and
Yeah,
pay 'em-
that, well, that's what started the whole thing, was I went to Nate and said, you know, with this kind of number, what is it gonna cost us to just pay you to come in and do it, to get it done quicker? You know, even if it costs us
Yeah.
$20,000 to get this done, it's still cheaper than paying this.
Right.
pay
you
for
know?
itself in the next year.
And what
Yeah.
did Nate say?
Well, that's when he came back and said that maybe it would make sense for us to bring that new person on, and with the new person, with the two people, we can get this done as part of our contract.
And there
But
goes.
we haven't had a chance to fully flesh that out.
We gotta
but-
work on the contract, I have to do the wastewater budget next month, but I do think that maybe looking into seeing what funds we have in the wastewater budget, if we could get somebody on earlier before
Absolutely.
July
Yeah.
1st, I think that's worth looking into.
I mean, we
I don't,
can't,
the wastewater budget is pretty, lean and trim. I don't think that you'd be able to
how about,
find-
any TIF money? Can we use that for that type of stuff?
Only for certain areas of town.
You're right.
We, but,
I guess we could start someplace, I don't know.
Right. I don't know.
We'd
Just a
probably have to-
thought.
We'd have, that's a good thought, actually, we'd have to look.
The one thing that's a little discouraging is that this whole project sort of comes under the headline of, you know, gee, it was a great idea, we've been talking about it for a year, and then it sort of gets lost in all the other stuff going on. And again, for Deborah's benefit, you know, a year ago, we were talking about this in the spring when we were getting
I
heavy
would-
rains and people had cameras in the
You know,
sewers, and then we just sort of forget about it.
if it
Well,
meant,
it's-
if it meant us taking back some of the contingency money that we just nested away to get it done.
Well, that's in
Because
next
the other
year's.
one that we're talking about is any type of future expenses for the manager can be, it's all
Well,
negotiable.
But we can't do that in the municipal budget, it's gotta be in the wastewater
Yeah.
budget.
I mean, so, again, my point is,
I don't think we knew this, we knew the problem was, but I don't think we knew the scope of it
Right.
until
Well-
more recently. We knew we had a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the scope of it was surprising to
you know, we
everybody.
talked about it, and we knew it would affect our
Well-
bond payments going forward.
That was
and-
last spring.
Yeah.
To Doug's point, I brought it up when we did the budget last year, when I got the estimated numbers from Maine Water,
And we
because
talked-
they were dramatically lower.
And we
than
talked
what
about
I
it in the Richardson room when we talked about it.
And then, but keep in mind, Woodard and Curran has been doing a bunch of work in the background, trying to track down where this is by doing pump flow tests and all of that stuff. And then that's when they suggested 4 months ago.
We did $20,000 worth of camera testing in our
Right.
pipes to see if it was a pipe problem.
Right.
Well, what
And-
did we learn, you know?
We've learned that our pipes are fairly tight and
Right.
that the problem has to be
You know,
homeward
this is
in.
the sort of thing we ought to, every month, get a report on. And I think for a while we did, you know, Mark and I kept sort of hammering away at the town manager report. Well, what did we find out, you know, this month on the pumps? But again, you know, things kind of just,
We go on to the next project and that
Yeah.
one gets into.
Well, but remember, that we did do that, and that's when he came back and said there's nothing conclusive in the pump testing, and that's when he said we should be gearing up to do this summer, do a investigation
Short-
of all the basements.
Short of hiring somebody full-time for them,
Mm-hmm.
what can we do between now and June 30th to get this taken care of?
Well, there's a lot of legwork that has to be done ahead of time, so we're really getting ahead of what's in the thing.
No,
But my plan was, after this meeting, with the idea that we were gonna have an intern, I was gonna have Molly start sending out the letters to homeowners now and have them set up appointments between May and July. And then that legwork would be all done. So when the intern showed up, the thought is that, okay, here's your list of inspections today, go do them, bring the paperwork back. Molly will do all the back end stuff while you're doing the inspection. So the idea was to have inspections lined up back to back, so that was all the intern had to focus on, so that we could get through all 800 inspections.
And we need to do this when people are in town, obviously.
Yes, exactly, during the summer.
And you have to do it when you can trace a pipe. Like if somebody has a sump pump downstairs and the pipe goes out into the woods, you have to be able to find the pipe. So in order for them to do that, it can't be snow covered.
So the thing we could do is pull the trigger, that's where Megan was on the agenda for today, was to pull the trigger on us moving forward with the letters, starting to set up the appointments, starting the announcements, getting that stuff done, regardless of if we have,
Yeah, we'll figure out how to get it done, but I think getting the process started.
because it's gonna take a little bit of time to get the announcements out, the letters out, give people time to respond.
I remember talking about letters and copying what Camden had used
That's what I did.
in 3 or 4 months ago. So that could have,
So
anyway, we're working towards a resolution.
how many homes are we talking about?
About 800.
And which homes are we,
So-
what's the distinction between who we have to do and who we
We're
don't?
doing anybody that's currently connected to the system or anybody that has the pipes go by their house, because they could have illegally connected to the system and we never would have known.
Okay.
So the idea is to do anybody that has sewer pipes that go by their home.
So in terms of the municipal budget, which is what Megan has to take care of first, is that I think, you know, taking the intern out of the municipal budget and the offsetting revenue is fine, I think, because that will give us a little more flexibility in the wastewater budget to budget for what we have to do, which is gonna be increasing probably the Woodard and Curran contract and maybe putting some extra money in over there for that as well.
And
I'm not saying don't do the project, because
Yeah.
I
Yeah, yeah,
certainly
yeah.
want you to do the project. I'm
We
just
still
saying
can
charge
do
it out
what
of
you're
wastewater.
saying, Doug, what you're suggesting, Doug, is by having somebody somebody local, retired person that wanted to, a part-time job over the summer, or a full-time job over the summer, do this kind of work. But it would just, we don't have to budget it in the town's budget, it can be budgeted in the wastewater.
Right, and I guess, you know, having you put it that way, that still sounds too loosey-goosey for me. I guess I would like to direct the town manager to contact Woodward and Curran and tell them, you know, find a professional who can do this and get her done.
I would
you know?
agree.
Yeah, I guess the question is timing. We send the letters out next week. I don't know what's the earliest possible we would be starting inspections anyway. It's probably 3 or 4 weeks down the
Well,
road, I would guess.
you'd have to,
The
Rick would have
idea
to find
was-
that out.
The idea was to start them in May, which would have been when we got the intern. So now the question is, when are we gonna have somebody here to do them? Because I don't wanna start setting up appointments and then have to cancel 2 weeks worth of appointments because we don't have.
I would, this is too much money to play around with. I'd turn it over to the professionals.
I would talk to Woodard and Curran and Andy in particular and see, you know, how much time can he himself find between now and the end of the budget year to take care of something? Especially if the responses come in slowly, if you get, 1 or 2 a week or something, he ought to be able to knock those off and at least keep up with the letters.
Those, we're gonna need to have, with 800 of them over,
Well, I know, but
Summary,
not
yeah.
everybody's gonna return the letter the day they get it.
I don't think
no.
we need to micromanage it. I think we just have Rick contact them, see what they can do, what they offer, how much it's gonna cost us, when they can start, and we go from there.
So, let me ask another question. I'm trying to recall. Camden is going to be submitting their bond out there for this at what point?
I think it's another
I
year,
think it's
isn't it?
another year
And they will use information from the year before.
from our notes.
The most recent information.
So
that's
we
what
need
we'll-
to ensure that we don't have that uptick
Right.
when they cut the paperwork to send in for the bond.
Yeah.
So what is like a deadline for that, maybe?
I think the idea was to get this project done this summer.
Summer.
All right.
And that'll be,
Well,
the
I'm just-
timing will work okay?
So I'm just trying to say, we ought to say that, we're looking to have it done by
Right, it does require some cooperations from the residents, too.
True, but I mean, to light a little fire under everybody's feet to make sure it gets done before next December.
With the intern, it would have been done in the middle of July.
Well, I think that should still then be our goal.
Yep,
If we
the
hire
end of
Woodward and
July.
Curran. I guess I'd like to ask Jeff to develop his thoughts a little bit more on this.
Thank you, Doug.
Well, no, okay, so fine, I think our goal should be the end of July.
Yeah.
And so that puts a little pressure on us to identify a crew that can get her done.
Yeah, we did some rough numbers about what it would cost, even if we were paying Woodard and Curran $25 an hour. No, we had a higher number.
So I just had another sort of quick question with regards to that 146, and even if we only found 50% of it, what would that result in for a property owner's decrease in what they would pay in? You had mentioned earlier there would be a reduction.
Well, part of the problem right now is that I haven't gotten the breakdown reports from Maine Water to see how much of the problem is going to Rockland and how much of the problem is going to Camden.
Okay.
So it's kind of hard to determine.
Well, and also I think you have to keep in mind with one thing with the wastewater budget, if Woodard and Curran is asking for another employee, their contract is gonna increase, so I don't know that there's gonna be a reduction in to the users, but certainly it will mitigate any increase if we can lop that number off the budget.
I would say so.
And it's a one-time increase as opposed to keeping this at an elevated level.
Who knows how many
20-year
years we've been
bonds.
paying.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that the second employee is probably gonna be moving forward because the system is getting bigger.
Oh, I see.
I think you hire one person and share them within 5 facilities.
I think, I think the biggest, biggest challenge will be getting, for Woodard and Curran to be able to hire somebody quickly enough and get them, get them here.
I think we'd have better luck taking a public works employee and like an intern from Midco Solid Waste or something and just getting it done.
Yeah, that could be possible,
As long
too.
as they know what they're looking for.
Right.
Well, Devin worked, he did work part-time with Andy and then part-time with Public Works. So if they could just dedicate Devin and an intern from Midco Solid Waste, I think we could definitely have it done by
Midco
the
School
middle
of
of.
Technology.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
I was wondering when they came in here.
If we paired the two of them together, that it could be
Thought
done
you were
fairly
gonna
quick.
Okay, well, I think the message has gotten across that the board/wastewater commissioners think this needs to happen
Pronto.
as soon as
Pronto.
possible, so that it gives us a significant long-term financial benefit to us. Okay. Just to bring you up to speed, Jeff, the only municipal budget change the board decided to do is we were 16,000 and some change under LD1, and the general consensus was to take 15,000 of that, put it in the town manager contingent line.
Excellent decision.
Allowing us to. So, I think we're probably done with the budget workshop if
Didn't
there's
order
nothing
pizza.
else. And Megan's plan, I believe, she told me the other day, was to go back now to the town office to.
I'm actually just gonna write them out,
Okay.
because the weather's so crappy.
Okay, because she has to redo the warrant articles that we had
Right.
in our packet, so that when we vote on them, it'll
Right.
be all
So,
right. So,
what can we take up for the next 36 minutes?
well, we can.
We can end the live stream anyway.
Yeah.
can't we?
Good.
Yeah,
the
so
meeting and the-
this workshop is adjourned.
Second. No, that kind of is, so moved.
Wait for Bruce to tell us we're off.